Welcome to Resisting Beta, the men's health podcast. And now, your host, Andrew Bontz. Welcome, men, to another episode of the Resisting Beta podcast. Today, I have an interesting guest. So, here are some questions that I had for Toni after diving into her book and taking a look at who she is on the internet. And I think that these could be some good topics to go in. So, what is holistic health? And how does it impact men in 2022, like right now? What are some of the consequences of men who hold in their emotions, and maybe why do we do that, and how do we get past that? Another one, a little bit more of a spicy topic. How does your diet impact your ability to perform in the bedroom? And then how does that impact a man's mental health if he's struggling in that area? And more of like a 10,000 foot view question is like, what is the role of the man in today's world? So Toni Hickman, she's an Emmy Award winner. She's a professional music artist, a certified naturopath, and an unorthodox spiritualist, which I don't know what that is. So I'm kind of curious about that. She's an author, a motivational speaker, and performer. You guys are going to love her energy. Thank you so much, Toni, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello, Resisting Beta podcast. Yes.
So Toni, you're an author and an artist, right? So tell me what inspired the book that you wrote on men's health.
There are several things. I used to have a business called Lady Arlene, and where I sold herbs, and I had clients because I am a certified naturopath and an herbalist. And so some of my clients would come to me with different areas of their life that they were struggling with, and they trusted me with this information. But it was mainly about their emotions, about depression, and then even their relationships and how they were struggling within their relationships because of different situations that they were going through. Mm. And then on top of that, I do have a son that also has gone through his range of emotions in his growing up, and just watching that and watching how society teaches men to think, or not even teaches men, but unconsciously programs men to think a certain way, be a certain way, and everything is not boxed. Emotions can't be boxed. And so that's where we have the dilemma. And that's what encouraged the book.
So now as a mother, right, in your book, you talk about spiritual health, men's mental, physical, and spiritual health from a woman's perspective. Now you have a 21-year-old son. What has that been like? Have you seen him evolve into a man over the last 10 years or so from a mom's perspective? And how have you tried to resist against kind of that programming that you're talking about, that society or culture or whatnot is kind of forcing into him?
Right. So what I have seen, because like I mentioned earlier, I am a single mother who has raised my son solely. I guess me and my mother have raised him. But he's been basically with me, but I did my best to put him around strong men so he can have that balance. But one of the things I saw, because women are natural nurturers, and so that's what we do. We love our children, and we're supposed to. But I saw that he did need balance, and I also saw that he struggled with learning how to let go of his emotions when he would have the influence of other men in his life that have also been taught, like, men don't cry, hold your pain back. And so I wanted him to have the balance. While I understand he needed to be around masculine men and go through sort of the rites of passage, he also needed to keep his understanding that like you always should make sure that you're able and you feel able to express your emotions. Like I have a spiritual, I guess, counselor for myself. And one of the things he speaks about highly, he said, if men weren't supposed to cry, they wouldn't have tear ducts.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's everyone has them because we're supposed to let out those emotions. And when we don't, that's when we go into the suicidal thoughts, the depression or whatever, because we're holding a bomb inside of our body that needs to come out. It's an emotional bomb.
Yeah, I feel that too because I think most of my life, I read a book called Crucial Conversations, and in that book, she talks about men either suffer in silence or violence. And I was always suffering in silence when I would be met with emotion, whether it be something that made me angry or sad. I would bottle it up, trying to just not upset the apple cart. Everything's fine. I'm good. No problem. And it's usually just kind of the fear of confrontation. And I think a lot of me growing up, my mom wanted to make it so I wasn't aggressive. Like I didn't fight and I didn't, lash out like that. So it was almost like a different version of bottling up emotions, right? Like, but then my dad didn't also show me a positive version of emotions either, because he was just very kind of, he was either pissed or just, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's the energy. Yes, exactly.
So when we look at today's society, and most of the men on here have sons, and we were kind of programmed in a way from society or fathers or whatever to react to emotion in different ways. To where,
Yes.
can you unpack kind of, because emotion's a broad term, right? So there's sadness, anger, excitement, you know, I kind of felt like the whole like men don't cry thing. I feel like that is less apparent in today's society, but it kind of gets the feeling that it's not, from kind of how you're talking about it. Your 21-year-old son. Like I have daughters, so I'm like flooded with emotions from my kids. So
Right.
um, I'm it's curious to hear that messaging is still being disseminated to kids now. I mean, your son's 21; he's not a child anymore. But I thought
I
that was
mean,
we were done with
yeah, yeah.
that.
And I think it goes into adulthood, and that's why we end up having all of this violence with men. And you find out about men, um, and you find out about men like being violent with their women or being violent with their children. And it's because they are holding in so much emotion and they've never been taught to express it.
Hmm.
And I think that's a major problem in our world. That's part of the reason that our world is the way it is, because we are dealing with a male dominant society that is controlling everything, and they haven't even been parented properly. And
Yeah.
so they are in ego and this manlyhood of like, we control everything, and you shouldn't be controlling if you are still bottling up a bomb within your own self, an emotional bomb. That's what I call it. Because
Hmm.
if you're holding in all of this energy for so long, can you imagine how that's stored and what it's doing to your spiritual self, your mental self, your health, even? So,
So when you look at like the world today,
mhm.
it's pretty easy to get stuck in the, this is all the things that are broken, this is all the things that are wrong. I'm kind of curious of who are some of the lighthouses, shining light onto the world that you believe have a true positive masculine energy. Someone that you would, hey son, follow, listen to that man, read his books, watch him, not the bad stuff, right? Or not the poor examples of masculinity in today's world.
Right. And so, and yeah, and I think it's a lot out there, but it's equally it's equally an amount of positive role models for men out there. And so there are a couple, like I love Les Brown, E.T., for my son to watch, but also I like him to make choices because as I've watched him grow, even in his selection of friends, which I'm very grateful for, but my son has always picked his friends. He hasn't allowed people to pick him.
Okay.
And so when he picked somebody different one time and he learned from that. And so those, and it's not to take away from these young men, but they have also just been taught wrong.
Hmm.
And so I didn't want that influence on my son. But I think there are several positive influences out there. I can't really name because it's so many. And so in these days, especially with social media and reels, he can come across people we've never even seen, and we see them say a positive message. So, and I think that's for all of us. We get to take the good messages from what people can feed us, and then we spit out the bad. That's in everything in life. And so that's one of the things I just hope that he gravitates toward. And he's still learning. He's 21. I'm also a caregiver, and so me and him actually help take care of my mother.
Okay.
And so he's still growing and learning, but he's finding his way, and I couldn't be more proud of him because he did not go the route that he could have. He could have gone a different route, especially as a melanin dominant young man in this world. And so I am very grateful that, he's definitely used his own wisdom. And I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I want to switch gears here a little bit. The holistic health, I'm pretty familiar with it, but I'd like to start with kind of like a basics conversation on what that means in today's world, because I think it's kind of buzzwordy right now. So, what is your definition of holistic health for a man in 2022 right now?
Being in touch with, and yeah, this is definitely my definition of holistic health for a man is being in touch with his emotions and being able to analyze when it is his emotions or his spiritual self speaking versus his ego.
Mm.
And ego comes in male dominance and it's defensive, versus your spiritual self is more of a listener and an analyzer of what you are doing. And so I think finding out who you are holistically is really diving into your higher self and identifying who that is, and who it is and who you are becoming. Because like, even when people like to say they're experts in a field, or the titles even box our identity into an ego based concept. And it's really not that, because we're always learning, we're always growing, we can still be wrong. So just opening yourself up to that balance of, like, I can know everything and I still know nothing. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying the opposite of ego is spirit, being connected to your
Your spirituality.
spirituality.
Yes, definitely.
Interesting. I have not heard that before. What are some examples? Welcome to Resisting Beta, the men's health podcast. And now your host, Andrew Bonts. At balance, whether from the positive side. I mean, I think there's enough out there from the negative side. I'm curious from a positive side of like when you see the transformation of someone becoming self-aware of this fact and trying to resolve it, unprogram that ego, right? I'm curious what
Um,
advice you'd give.
and if I can just say, and I don't know if your audience would even know who Kevin Gates is, but he's a hip hop artist who went to jail, and he could have been caught in his ego at some point, and sometimes he still is. But when he is, he actually acknowledges it, and he's like, hold up, I got to go back because that's my ego. Like, I think that's so huge for somebody
Mm.
that might be on a level where everybody is watching them, and they can find themselves in their ego and check it when it comes out. And so, like I said, the ego is defensive. The ego is defensive and authoritative, and it's just, it wants to dominate,
Mm.
versus the spiritual self is an observer and an analyzer of self.
Okay. I like that. I haven't heard that perspective before, and I respect that for sure.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the other parts of the holistic side of things? I know that you being an herbalist and uh, men coming to you to help solve problems that sometimes they might go to the chemical route, that going to their doctor and get a prescription and that kind of stuff. Like,
Yes, and yes.
what were what were those conversations like, and what were most men kind of coming to you with?
So I will tell you the irony that, and I'm just connecting this right now, so I want you to know that. But the irony is, most men that came to me and had high blood pressure issues,
Mm.
they also had erectile dysfunction issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if a man starts taking blood pressure medication for anything in his life, any medication for that matter, it can also interfere with their erectile dysfunction, or the lack of. Um,
Right.
and so that is one of the things I acknowledged. I dealt with a lot of high blood pressure, um, some diabetes, but a lot of high blood pressure, skin issues, depression, erectile dysfunction. Erectile
So,
dysfunction is probably the top.
so why are so many men suffering with erectile dysfunction, and how is that connected to their daily habits?
So there are a couple of situations that the medical industry will not prove this, but this is one of my beliefs, and it's not just my belief. I think a couple of holistic health practitioners also believe this. Um, But one of the donations to erectile dysfunction is the medications, and that is coming from the diet. So you need the medications because the diet that most men are eating is full of starch and protein and breads and sugars and all of these foods that create a glue in the body, right? Like, I
Mm.
don't know if when you were in school, how you made glue. Did y'all ever go through anything like that? Like, how did you make glue
Oh man, I
from
don't think I
scratch?
ever
You never did that.
made glue from scratch. No, I didn't
Okay.
have that science experiment. I feel like I missed out.
Well, I did, and I will tell you, and this is something when I got certified, or after I got certified, I started putting this together. Um, but we made glue with flour and water, and that's how
Mm.
you could make stuff stick together, right?
Okay.
So, what is bread, pasta, cake? What is it made out of?
Flour, water, sugar, salt, a little baking
Exactly.
soda, maybe
Yeah.
some butter.
But all of it makes it's sticky. Everything is
Yeah.
sticky foods, right? Sticky foods. And so when people in general, not just men, but when you are digesting this food since young, because we give our babies crackers and cookies and bread and toast and peanut butter and jelly, like we've been doing that since young, right? And
Hmm.
so this has been building in your system since you were young. And then by the time you grow up, you still have all the sticky stuff that is starting to stick in your vessels and make the blood hard to pump, on top of other meats and different things that you may eat. And so I don't knock if somebody decides to eat anything. It's not my job to knock anybody's diet. However, it is my job to monitor how much, if you are deciding to be a client of mine, how much of this food you are putting in your body, because it can be disruptive. So if you're eating a lot of foods that turn more into acid than alkaline in your body, then you're going to deal with an acidic body, which is slow on pumping blood. And then when it goes down there, it's like whoop whoop, like,
Right.
it's very difficult to get that situation in place. And so that's a very touchy subject for men,
Mm-hmm.
because again, we deal with the male dominance and the male ego. So the penis for a man is like their strength, their
Mm-hmm.
sword. And it's like if something happens to their sword, it's like it's very depressing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I've dealt with that a lot. I'm sorry.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
um, so when you are helping your clients, what are the phases of elimination? Is that very personalized, or is it kind of systematic to where like, hey, let's cut this and then that and then this and see
I have a
what
general.
happens?
I have a generalized. I have a generalized for those that just want to start immediately, and it is 80% raw, 20% cooked. No matter what you
Mm.
decide to eat, uh, meat and potatoes do not go together.
Oh,
That is,
okay.
and we get it at every fast food restaurant, every Outback Steakhouse is steak and potatoes. You can't go anywhere where they don't serve steak and potatoes, but it's one of the harshest meals on your system, because it's a starch mixed with an acid, and it's really very harsh. So you can eat steak with greens. If you decide to eat meat, you can eat it with a vegetable or a salad. But when you try and digest it with potatoes, it can be very damaging to the body.
So is it not pairing them at all, or is it just kind of eliminating the starch as much as possible?
The starch eventually should be eliminated as much as possible, because the starch is a glue. All starches are
So
glue.
and is that like normal potatoes, sweet potatoes? Is it anything potato?
So and we debate on the sweet potatoes. I still say monitor that as well, because it's still a starch. But
Mm.
we love sweet potatoes, right?
Yeah, as we're coming up to
I
Thanksgiving here,
know,
you know.
right? Yeah, so I just say monitor it. Like monitor
Okay.
again, 80% raw, 20% cooked. If you're vegan or if you are a meat eater, eating fresh fruit and fresh vegetables is the key. That is what
Mm.
will go through your system and not stick. But when you are constantly, most of us are not eating like that. Some of us are not eating vegetables at all.
Hmm.
And then we wonder why we're going through so many health issues. And stress is another factor that comes in there. But when you are dealing with so much, which in America, in our world, period, we are dealing with so much stress. So when we decide to also uh, stress and eat horribly, because we're emotionally eating because of the stress we're dealing with, that takes it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, stress is a legitimate risk to everyone, but like, how do you eliminate it? So you're kind of just trying to manage it, right? So, I don't want to lose the diet stuff. So the 80/20 there, eliminate starches as much as possible, if not entirely,
Yep.
and don't eat starches and meat together. So, how long, if a man is having erectile issues, like how long, if they start making these changes, does it take that to impact? I mean, every man's going to be a little bit different, but how long does it take to see some changes usually?
It depends on how fast the man corrects his diet. For example, I
Mm,
had an obese person that came to me, and and they wanted to change. They wanted to lose weight, and so I gave
mm,
them some herbs to change the structure of their metabolism. But they can't. You can't eat. You can't take. It's like taking Tylenol for a headache and then like doing the exact thing, eating too much salt again or something that is causing the headache. You can't do that. You have to take the problem out of your diet, if you
right.
want to really create change. And so the medical system likes to focus on areas versus the whole.
Yeah.
And
Treat the symptoms.
yeah, exactly. And really you have to focus on the whole body. You have to focus on everything. And so that will be
Hmm.
completely cleaning your diet. Now, I love to try and put people on all raw because that's one of the quickest ways to clean up your diet. And so you have, again, we deal with the ego in our world. And so you have a lot of people who don't want to lose weight. They're scared to lose weight because of how society may look at them.
Hmm.
But the reality is when you gain weight, the body will store toxins in fat in your body. And then
Hmm.
it'll create more fat to store more toxins. So when you
Oh.
lose weight, you are actually losing the toxins as well.
Hmm. So as they start that, because so I went through my divorce a couple years ago, and I suffered with issues with erectile dysfunction for a while, and I went on this huge mission of like, holy crap, that sucked, and it impacted my mental health too, to where I felt less of a man. I, I was dating at the time, to where it was, I basically I stopped dating for the most part, towards like, oh, what's the point of dating if you can't,
Right.
build that relationship forward if there's a connection there, So, and I looked at so many different things. I looked at cold therapy. I looked at acupuncture. I looked at, uh, you know, I was reading a book at the time called The 4 Hour Body, and he talks about how to boost your testosterone. So I got my testosterone checked, and all of these different things because, you know, I've heard that erectile dysfunction is kind of like the first barometer of if your health is out of whack, especially any sort of blood health, heart health, that kind of stuff. So it sent me down this gigantic rabbit hole of information, but there's so much shame around it. So much shame. If you can't perform in the bedroom, I mean, that it's super embarrassing when you're,
And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, but that also is the picture that has been painted on our world with men. Like men men are not allowed to show weakness. And so any form of weakness that is shown with a man, like is it attacks the ego. Yeah.
and what is alcohol's impact on erectile dysfunction and how the man's body
Oh
functions?
yeah, it definitely. It's another acidic. It's full of sugar. It turns into sugar in the body. It has no health benefits whatsoever. Yeah, it's disruptive. And yeah. Hmm.
Because there's this whole topic of, it's called whiskey dick. Is Have you heard that term before?
I've heard
Where
of. I know
where, where guys, after having some alcohol, they can't perform in the
hmm.
bedroom, and is that just their systems all out of whack because there's too much sugar and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff? I mean,
it's
I'm
a
just
little,
kind of
yeah,
curious.
it's a little bit of all of that. Yeah, it's because they have too much sugar in the body, and again, that sticky stuff that is slowing down the blood pumping to the penis. And so that problem is it's a problem in itself. Yeah. but sugars, period.
You're gumming yourself
Yeah,
up.
literally, like a whole bunch. That's why I say sticky foods. We don't like to talk about it because we're addicted to it.
Right.
But sticky foods are the devil. If we want to find out who a devil is, the foods, the sticky foods, yes, that's the devil. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is, I mean, you talked about a project, a book that you're working on, and kind of putting this all into a manual or some good information packaged around that. So, like, tell me a little bit about that project. And I know it's not out yet, and I'm kind of spin it a little bit so men can get excited about this coming out.
Okay, so it is it's called Stop Eating the Wrong Shit. And
I love it.
and it's a book basically about the foods that we eat, how they are contributing to the demise of our health, and 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 explaining how it is contributing, but also it's a solution based book because I don't like writing anything where I can't give solutions. To me, that makes no point. And so, also a way to get back on track and get your life and your erectile function in health, because I know men that actually do operate, and they do have erectile function, and they can be like 60, 70 years old. But they are extremely disciplined in their health. And that's the key. I promise that's the key. What we put in our mouth each time, no matter what it is either contributing to our health or contributing to our destruction.
I saw that quote in your book, and I had not heard that quote
Yeah.
before. So I think that's a really powerful quote, where because I, from a business owner's perspective, it's like you're either growing or you're
Yeah.
dying, right? So you're either doing stuff to grow yourself and grow your business, or you're sitting still and you're kind of
Fading.
you're
Yeah,
dying at that point,
exactly.
right? So from your own health, where being aware of, okay, having that, I think that having that filtered question is the foundation of discipline,
Yeah.
right? Your ability to tell your stomach or your mind or whatever comes a thought to fuck off,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
like no, I'm not doing that, because I have this almost like a mantra of, is this contributing to my life or is it killing me?
Right.
So I think having those is
Yeah.
important.
And then the cravings that we get, I believe that it is parasites that kind
Oh,
of get in our system and say, okay, I'm ready for this. You have to feed me this. Like there's a study that has been done with cancer patients, and also schizophrenia patients. And one of the things that contribute to both of these ailments is sugar. The main thing that cancer patients and schizophrenia patients have in common is they both crave sugar, the one thing that is detrimental to their health. So, yeah.
man, it tastes good though.
It's delicious, and it's delicious, and it's addictive. Like they did a study, I think I put that in the book too, but they did a study with the rats at a university, and so they got the rats addicted to cocaine. All of the rats
Yeah.
addicted to the cocaine, and then they got them addicted to sugar. And then they put the rats in the cage, and they had sugar in one corner and the cocaine in another, and maybe like out of 100, maybe nine rats went to the cocaine, and the rest of the rats went to the sugar.
Yeah, I've heard people say that sugar is more addicted to nicotine,
I'm
cocaine, all
saying,
these different
yeah,
drugs,
we
but
normalize it.
because
We've normalized it.
well, that was one thing, like in the 4 Hour Body, like as I was like, okay, I'm going to fix this ED issue stuff because this is complete bullshit. And they basically was eliminating all sugars. And after a while, I lost the craving, but then I fell off the diet, and that sugar tooth or
Sweet tooth.
sweet tooth
Hmm.
or whatever, it came back, So It's a struggle. I mean, you'll fight your inner like
Yeah,
discipline of like, oh man, that candy bar or that whatever is screaming at me. I mean, I joke that I have to be very careful what I tell myself. I need to stop saying I have no willpower around baked goods because that's just
it
reinforcing that.
is.
But
Yeah.
anyway, a little light bulb in my own head, you know. But it's that
It's
sugar,
and it's connected to our emotions. I think I did an interview,
right?
um, but it's connected to our emotions because we celebrate so many. Like we have Thanksgiving coming up, we have birthdays, we have
Hmm.
Christmas, we have parties. Everywhere that we celebrate is food, and so in
Yep.
our unconscious thought, we we actually crave these foods also because we are reminded that they give us a good feeling. And I
Hmm.
think that's part of the issue. But it's always connected to emotions that we are not directly clarifying or understanding. Yeah,
So we're around. We only have about 10 minutes left, so I do
no
want
problem.
to make sure we're being intentional about that because I feel like we've hit some momentum here. That I want to keep going, but it always happens that way. That's okay. So, so if the men want to pay attention to when your book's coming out and take a look at your current book, her book right now is A Man's Cry for Health, a holistic look at a man's mental, physical, and spiritual health from a woman's
Yes, I
perspective.
have it right here.
Uh,
Yeah, this is it right here. Um,
nice. I bought the PDF version and I've been diving into that. Where can men find that and continue the conversation with you the best? Are you
I
Instagram? Are
am on
you
all social media at the real Toni Hickman, except Twitter, but I don't do Twitter, so I don't announce it.
ah,
But yes, I am on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram at the real Toni Hickman. So that's Toni Hickman, Hickman. And you can definitely find me, inbox me, or you can email me at info@tonihickman.com. Yeah.
awesome? And I'll put that in the show notes, guys, so you can follow those links and dive in a little bit further if you'd like to. So I always end each episode with a couple different questions. And one of them is a new one is what do you believe it means to be a man?
I am still listening. That is a box. That is a box. I am still trying to put the puzzle together. But I believe that men are here to also be our protectors. For women, you're here to be our protectors, our warriors. Um, and I also believe that you have a heart that needs to be nourished in order to be the best version of yourself as a man. And if your heart is not nourished, it's damaged, just like same thing with the food concept. You know, if you're not receiving the
Mm,
proper nourishment, then it can turn cold. Your heart can turn cold. But I think a
mm,
man has the capability of being amazing or a monster. But that's all of us.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that Indian parable of the there's a father and a son, and he's talking about the two wolves, and one wolf is like the bad wolf, and one's the good wolf, and
Yes,
he
I know
said,
what you're talking about.
I'm going to butcher this
Right.
story, but which wolf wins? He's like the one that you
Yes,
feed.
exactly. Exactly.
So I want you to put your professor hat on and give some homework to the men. I like creating quick wins, right? So, what is something a guy can do over the next 7 days that can help them, just take action on what we've talked about today and start getting some quick results in their life?
Okay. So as far as high blood pressure, you want to take the sugar out. completely. And so a lot of people will say, I'm taking the sugar out, and then you're still buying these store-bought juices that are sitting on the shelf. And those are just filled with sugars. Even if it says no sugar added, it still has sugar in it. So no store-bought, unless it is fresh pressed from Whole Foods, or if you have a grocery store in your area that does fresh pressed juice. Other than that, no store-bought juices, cakes, cookies, none of that. Um, and eliminate starch. If you want to go hard, do raw, completely raw. And when I say raw, I'm saying fruits and vegetables only. I won't tell you herbs unless you are on not on medication, because most medications that are out right now, they interfere with the herbal process, and it can cause more problems. So, but you can correct your health with foods alone. And one way to do that is definitely taking the starches out, taking the sugars out, and if you want to go hard, like I said, an all raw diet or even an all liquid diet, and that can consist of
Hmm.
smoothies. So the liquids is the quickest way.
What about protein? If you're going all raw, like how do they get their
You
protein?
know, that's like the number one question for people who, yeah, that's a big question, especially a lot of meat eaters may ask that question too. And the reality is, even the meats that most of us may consume, or most people may consume, they have the meats that you're consuming, the animals are getting their protein from the grass and all of that. And so you do have vegetables that give you protein. You have beans that give you protein, if that's what you're looking for. But the reality, and this goes against most doctors, so you might have somebody watch and say, no, she's not right, and that's okay. Uh, but you have enough protein stored in your body right now. You don't need to worry about protein. Yeah.
Hmm. That is pretty
Yeah.
controversial. I wouldn't even stay there for a bit, but that's all right. Um, well, what is so rounding out the episode here? What is some just one little piece of advice that we didn't necessarily talk about that you would give the men and leave us with? What's one little golden nugget that we want to leave the men with today?
Well, like I said, I think that men and women, we all have this this concept of each other in our head, and I think that when we can learn to try and understand each other versus putting our preconditioning ideology on each other, I think that can help us all grow. And so for men, um, I would say I would ask that you would be that same way with women and the women in your life, because no matter how you've been programmed, we all have been programmed. We all have trauma that we have been through in our life. And so the key to any lasting relationship, whether it's friendships or someone you're married to or dating, the key is understanding and being patient and compassionate toward uh, each other's healing. And yeah,
Mm, awesome. Well, men, this is great information from Tony.
thank you.
And it won't mean anything unless you take action and do something
Right.
about it. So you don't need to change. You don't have to marry this concept, but let's date this concept. Like go on a 30-day sugar fast and try it out. See what your
And
body
can I
does.
add
And
one more
I think
thing?
that
Yes, because
yeah, go ahead.
just like we said earlier, next time you put anything in your mouth, whether it's in a cup or on your fork, spoon, whatever, before you put it in your mouth, just train your brain to start questioning, is this helping me? And if you're dealing with erectile dysfunction, is this helping me or is this hurting me? And if you can train your brain to start thinking like that every single time you put something in your mouth, you will be amazed at how much you change your diet.
And like on the opposite side of that, like, let's just stay out of dysfunction. Let's talk about optimization.
Right.
Towards like what, maybe you might start feeling like you're 20 years old
Yes.
again and having multiple erections and lots of sex. I mean, that life sounds pretty fantastic too. So let's talk about the upside.
And one more thing, I'm so sorry because I meant to add this, and I do need to add this. Men masturbate too much. You need to learn to stop that. And so we live in a world where they are forcing pornography in your face. You're seeing it all over social media, and men are masturbating all the time. And so you've let all of your life force out of your body, and that is another lead to your erectile dysfunction. So stop masturbating.
And
yes.
for mental health.
Yes.
So.
Okay, I'm done.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, thank you being here. This has been a great conversation with Toni. We will see you next time on Resisting Beta. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Resisting Beta podcast. Here's where I need your help. I'd love for you to give us a review on your favorite podcast player. Also, follow us on TikTok and Instagram and share this message out to a man that needs to hear it, because that's how we impact this world. Thank you very much. Make it a great day, men.